In order to keep bringing you guys tons of free content, we work with brand partners who you'll hear from in this episode, including an advertisement from Zopa Bank. 20s Fest is taking place at Camp and Furnace on Sunday, the 1st of October, 2023. Tickets are now live. Head to www.talk20s.com/20sfest to grab your ticket. And as a special thank you for being a loyal podcast listener, you can use the code podcast10 for 10% off your ticket. It's going to be an incredible day. We're excited to see you there. Welcome back to the Talk Twenties podcast. What's next after graduating? Well, today we're joined in the studio by Lydia Violeta, who has spent the last 6 years documenting her studies online and recently graduated from the University of Leeds. In this episode, we chat about her university experience and her exciting next steps in the digital nomad life. If you're curious about traveling more and living abroad, this is definitely the episode for you. As ever, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button or follow and share this episode with a friend who is graduating this year. Let's go. Well, hello, Lydia. Welcome to the podcast. I feel like the first thing I want to say to you is congratulations.
Thank you.
Because you've recently graduated, like literally last week.
Last week.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. How do you feel?
Everyone keeps asking me that question. And I don't know, in total honesty, I'm in a really funny headspace right now because the graduation day itself was amazing. It was so lovely. You know, my parents came up to Leeds and we went out for dinner with my boyfriend and his parents, and it was such a nice day. But at the same time, it's been so bittersweet because driving away from Leeds after the ceremony, I drove back to Nottingham with my parents. I think it hit me for the first time that, oh my God, it's really ending now. Like, I'm actually done with university because I finished my exams at the start of June, but knew I was coming back for graduation. So I don't think I'd really processed the fact that I was actually finishing. And even now, it still feels like I should be coming back. It feels like there's still another year, another term. And yeah, so I definitely haven't processed it yet. I'm definitely in a bit of a weird headspace, but overall, yeah, it's been great.
Do you feel like you're in a bit of a unique situation as well because of your YouTube channel? Because obviously that's a huge part of your identity. Like, you've documented your whole experience of university online. Do you think that's like playing into that as well?
Yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting dilemma because when you're a StudyTuber, which is kind of a term that I would loosely apply to the kind of content that I made online, although I was probably more of a student influencer. For the last 6 years on the internet, all of the content that I've been creating has been kind of to do with the fact that I am a student in one way or another, whether I'm talking about exams, whether I'm talking about, you know, lifestyle at uni. So when you graduate, it's sort of a double whammy of graduation because you're graduating, you know, the actual university degree. And I'm, in a way, graduating my whole personal brand and identity on social media as well.
And is there fear around that? Like, is there excitement? Like, I feel like you probably don't want to get asked, and I don't think many graduates want to get asked is, what's next? Like, what are you doing next? So like, I used to dread that question when people ask me.
It is the dreaded question, yeah. I would absolutely love to carry on doing social media content creation in one way or another. It's just, I essentially now not need to start from the beginning, but because my content has been focused on the fact that I was a student for so long, I almost need to repurpose and find a new identity on the internet. So I would love to keep going, but it's definitely going to be a case of trial and error on what I'm going to focus on next, really.
Well, we've seen a lot of YouTubers kind of in this kind of space do it very, very well. And I don't doubt that you will be one of them as well. I think one of the most prominent ones you can all probably know of is like Grace Beverley. She documented a lot of her kind of university life at Oxford and stuff like that, and then has gone on to be incredibly successful. So it's definitely been done before, and I'm sure you'll be one of those people for sure. But I want to chat to you a little bit more about your experience at university, because I think there's a lot of things that we kind of expect from our university experience, and there's a lot of things that we kind of just do because we're like, oh, we're at uni, like that's what you do when you're at uni. But we chatted a bit beforehand about some of the stereotypes you kind of weren't a fan of when you were in university, and how talking about it through your platform allowed you to open up loads of conversations around that. And one of those things was being like sober or sober curious and drinking less. Everyone thinks that when you go to uni, you have to be drunk to have a good time. Like that's a narrative that is often passed around. But like, what was your experience of that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. When I started university, I didn't question the Freshers Week and the whole culture around drinking at university, especially because I went to Leeds, and Leeds has a bit of a reputation of being a party city, a party university. So when I joined, I didn't think twice about it. I just thought, this is what everyone's doing. This is the thing to do. And especially when you're first starting, all you want to do is fit in. So I didn't even question anything to do with drinking, clubbing, partying at uni. I just went along with all of it. And I'd say that mindset carried on for quite a few years for me, just because it's that whole thing of, this is just what we do at uni. And I then went on a study abroad year to Copenhagen, and we went out less frequently, as I feel like you do as you go up the years in uni. But still, once again, when someone suggested a night out or going to a bar or whatever, I just went along with it, didn't really question it. And I'd say it was only really when I got into my final year of uni that I finally started to really question whether this was something that I actually enjoyed. And in my head, it firstly started because I sort of made a pledge with myself. Oh, I'm not going to go out as much. I'm not going to drink as much because I want to focus on my studies in my final year. And I feel like that was the first step backward from it that I took. And just that small mindset shift allowed me to kind of consider the bigger picture of the situation and evaluate further whether or not it was something that I actually did enjoy. Because as soon as I kind of said that to myself and stopped going on as many nights out and stopped drinking as much in general, I found that I was more focused. I found that I felt healthier. I could see, physical benefits in kind of my skin and all things like that. So yeah, from there, I think I sort of realized that actually I'd been going along with this for so many years without ever really questioning whether it was something for me. And actually it wasn't. So yeah, I'm not sober, but as you said, I'm sober curious, as everyone says. But it was really interesting having that mindset shift while still at uni, because I feel like from what I've heard, quite a few people have that when they've left university and are maybe starting work. But for me, it happened whilst I was still there. So that was an interesting experience, because once I had this realization, I then couldn't go along with as many things as I used to, because I just couldn't see, I guess, the benefit in a lot of it anymore. And yeah, it made me sort of realize how so many of these stereotypes at uni and expectations are actually quite unhealthy and toxic in some ways, that it is the expectation that we should be drinking these huge amounts every time we go out. And so many of the events and socials and societies and everything around you, everything at uni is sort of centered around drinking. So yeah, it was definitely an interesting sort of eye-opener.
And did you get like a kickback from like your friends? Did like any of your friends kind of like push you on it, or like were you surrounded by people who were pretty accepting? Like, did anyone say anything about it?
My close friends were definitely accepting of it, but you still get questioned when you're not drinking.
It sounds like a silly question for me to ask, really. Like, were people accepting of the fact that you weren't drinking? Because like it sounds stupid, but realistically, that's what happens a lot. Like, you can't beat around the argument that people will probably go, if you're not drinking, oh, are you unwell? Are you an alcoholic? Are you pregnant? Absolutely. Like, that's the kind of connotations that people kind of have, where it could just be like a healthy life choice, like that you've obviously made. But a lot of people often have a lot to say about it.
Yeah. You can never just say, I'm not drinking and leave it there. There's always got to be a reason for it. But for me, the reason is it's just a preference, really. It's not even really a reason. So people were accepting, yes, but accepting if you gave them a reason to accept it, which is, when you kind of spell it out like that, it's actually such a strange, like, cultural thing.
I'm sure not all cultures are like that. Like,
oh, no.
For sure. Like, I know in like more European kind of cultures, they're just... alcohol is a part of their life, but it's not like binge culture. Like, I have like French heritage, and like you have a glass of wine with dinner, and that's just like totally like normal. But it's not like have 20 bottles of wine like for a night out. Like, it's just not the same. And I think it's strange the way we have this culture in the UK. But I think I'm seeing a lot more young people have this mindset shift that you're definitely not the first person I've heard to kind of experience this. My sister was very similar at uni. Like, she got to the end of it and was like, I'm just sick of drinking. Like, you know, it's not, I don't find it enjoyable anymore. So what would you say to someone who's in your shoes, like, and thinking about stopping drinking? What would you want to say to them?
I'd say definitely think about your reasons for it. And then in a way, think about what you can replace it with, not in, you know, an actual beverage alternative. But for me, as soon as I stopped drinking lots on a night out, I found that I had a whole other day to the week that I didn't even have before because I was so hungover. But then I could get up in the morning and I could, you know, go to yoga or go to a cafe or do all these other things that I enjoyed. So I'd say think about kind of what you can save by doing that. And yes, you might think that you're missing out by not drinking or not going to that specific event or party or club night, but then think about what you can do instead, I guess. Because I think fear of missing out is a big reason why a lot of us do just go along with these plans, but actually don't think about it in the sense of missing out. Think about it in the sense of, okay, what can I gain from this situation, from this time, from this money that I'm going to save, whatever it is that you're saving.
I think when I drink less, it's definitely like that anxiety is like, you know, the worst thing. I have so much anxiety around when I drink. And like, if I don't have that in my life, that's immediately my life is 10 times better because I'm just not anxious. And like, if I know there's a correlation between alcohol and anxiety, like I'm going to choose to drink less alcohol rather than choose the anxiety. Like, sometimes you kind of got to do stuff that like looks after yourself at the same time. Like,
definitely. Yeah. And anxiety was, you've actually reminded me, that was one of the main reasons that I stopped drinking, because it reached a point when I was living in Copenhagen that I didn't even have to drink a copious amount of alcohol to wake up the next morning and actually not remember a big portion of the night before. Kind of this is how bad it was getting. And I would say I wasn't drinking a lot, but it was clearly enough to, you know, have that happen to my brain. And it got to a point where it was actually really scary because I lived on my own in Copenhagen as well. So there was points where I didn't even remember how I got home the night before and whether I'd taken the metro or if I'd walked. One time I tried to bike home. Don't do that. I think it's actually illegal. Woke up in the morning with like cuts and everything. And I was like, this can't.
It's dangerous, isn't it? Like, a young like woman in a city, like everyone would tell you to avoid that. But then when you put alcohol into the situation, it just makes those things way more likely to end up happening.
Yeah. And I was like, this just isn't worth it for me personally.
No. Well, it's really interesting, and I think you won't be alone. Even if people are listening to this and still, you know, want to drink and have a good time, like, you know, you can still have a good time and cut down. Like you said, you're not completely sober, but you've just chosen the times when you do want to drink and, you know, and it's made your life better. So I think it's really good to have those healthy conversations. But one of the things you have mentioned a couple of times is studying abroad in Copenhagen. So tell us a little bit more about that.
So yeah, this was an optional year that I took in the middle of my degree. So it was between my second year and my final year. And yeah, I was very lucky. I went to Copenhagen Business School for a year. And absolutely loved it. I can't wait to go back to Copenhagen. The only thing I would say is it's such an expensive city. So,
where are you storing your savings right now? Just a quick one from our sponsor, Zopa Bank, home of the Smart Saver account. Zopa Smart Saver lets you save in different pots at different interest rates, depending on the notice period you choose to access your savings. The bigger the notice period on your pots, the bigger the interest rate. To find out more about the Zopa Smart Saver, download the Zopa app. We need to tell you that boosted interest pots are subject to a notice period, the longest of which is 95 days for the highest interest rate. You need to save a minimum of £1, and the interest is paid monthly and is subject to variation.
it was a massive dent to my bank account.
Yeah.
But apart from that, it was an incredible experience. And I'd say doing that study abroad year actually sort of changed my life plans in a lot of ways, because before doing it, I was very set on actually doing a year in industry, which is sort of the other option to a study abroad year. It's where you do a kind of placement year and work with a company for a year. I kind of wanted to do that, and then I was going to stay in the UK afterwards, and I was going to go down the very sort of conventional corporate business, probably marketing path. But then I went on this study abroad year instead, and yeah, it just opened my eyes to kind of how beneficial and amazing living abroad can be, and how much it can teach you to get out of kind of the bubble that the UK can be sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And since then, you've done quite a bit of other travel, haven't you? Where else have you been?
Yeah, I've been so fortunate. I just spent a month in Indonesia with my boyfriend. Last year, we did the east coast of Australia and Canada and Hawaii. So we've done a few big trips together in the last few years, just in kind of the summer holidays between university, which has been incredible. And we're so lucky that we've been able to do that.
And is there anything that you've like learned, or kind of things for people maybe who are thinking about traveling and stuff like that? What has it kind of taught you? Because I know there's so many things that you just cannot be taught, but like traveling teaches you those kind of things.
Yeah, from a 20s perspective, I guess, traveling has been one of the most reassuring things that I've ever done, because especially when you're doing popular backpacking routes like Australia, or even in Indonesia, we met a lot of backpackers, and you meet people that are at all different stages of their 20s. And just hearing their experiences has been so reassuring, because to me, when I think, I'm 22 now, so I'm kind of in my early 20s. And when I think of what my life would be like at age 27, I feel like I've got to have it all sorted out. But then, I mean, sorted out, whatever that means. But then you meet 27-year-olds traveling who have given up their job, given up their house, sold their car, literally everything to go and travel. And I think it reminds you that there's not this linearity to your 20s that I think everyone assumes that there is, or at least I definitely assumed that there was. I assumed that I'd be on some sort of upward trajectory from the moment I left uni till, 27 or whatever age these people were that I was meeting. And I think it also reminds you that linearity doesn't necessarily guarantee happiness in a way, because I am yet to meet someone that is unhappy traveling. Even though when you think of things like giving up your house, giving up everything that you have, you kind of, it's nerve-wracking and it makes you feel anxious. But actually, those people that had done that were thriving not knowing what they were going to do when they got back, and being happy with that and accepting the fact that they would find something when they got back, and they would buy a new car and they would find a new flat to move into. So I think for me in my early 20s, meeting those people on those routes was just so reassuring.
And I think it's a really nice reminder for anyone listening to this now, whatever stage they're at in their 20s, that like, if you want to, I mean, I'm not going to advertise to everyone, but if you want to quit your job and travel, like, you will be okay. Like, and maybe this is the sign that you needed, if that's what your burning like desire is to go and do. Like, I think a lot of people really put off that because they're scared of what might happen. They may be scared of going backwards, or they're scared of, not feeling such security and stuff. But I think from everything you said there, I feel like I've actually got like a bit of like goosebumps really, because you will always be okay. Like no matter what you decide to do. And there's just something about traveling that gives you so many like opportunities and allows you to see the world in such a different way. So I kind of love that you've taken that away from it and like have that perspective at 22, because I think I probably needed to hear that as well, like when I was
definitely.
younger. One of the things that we've chatted about a little bit is your next steps. And whilst you're like really like not sure about graduating and super, super like scared, you do have a little bit of a plan. Like tell us about your plan.
A vague plan. So as I mentioned at the start, I would love to continue doing social media content creation. It's something I'm so passionate about. I love the community that we've created. It just feels like the best bunch of people on the internet. So I would love to continue what I'm doing now. So that is my plan, I guess, to try and continue pursuing social media content creation. But as I also mentioned, I'm not quite sure what my new purpose is going to be, my new identity. But I am moving to Berlin next week, actually now.
So exciting. We had to get this podcast in before you flew.
Before I flew off. So I'm moving to Berlin, and really luckily, my boyfriend is also working a remote job. It's in a small business. There's just him and this other guy. So it's very flexible. And we're going to kind of pursue a digital nomad sort of life and slow travel, I think is what it's called. And so slow travel and remote work at the same time. So we're moving to Berlin. It's going to be for 3 months. And then after that, we're not sure. But we've got a list of locations that we'd quite like to go to. And yeah, it's just kind of working out where we want to go next. We're honestly not sure if it's going to work or not. It could be a completely unrealistic plan, but we've got the first 3 months down. So we've got 3 months to see, I guess, whether or not this is something reasonable and realistic to be pursuing. But that's the goal and the vision for at least the next year, possibly longer.
I guess you guys have already done quite a bit of traveling together. So I know that you probably know that you can travel and enjoy each other's company. So I can't see, unless you like completely run out of money, lose your jobs, I can't see it not working. Like,
this is the thing. And it is like that. It's like with any situation, I am so guilty of catastrophizing it. Yeah. And I think this is another situation that I'm catastrophizing, when actually this is such a fortunate position for us to be in. So fortunate that my boyfriend has also managed to get a remote job, and just it seems like the stars have aligned in a way. So I don't know why I'm trying to tear it all down saying it's going to fail after 3 months, but actually hopefully it won't, and it will be this amazing lifestyle. Because also I don't know many digital nomads, at least. No. I feel like there's quite a stereotype of digital nomads. There's not really anyone fresh out of uni that, we earn like a good income, enough to live on, but not as much as we would earn if we moved to London and got a corporate job like so many other people do at uni. But it's just trying to pursue this, I guess, kind of alternative lifestyle. We love travel, but we also need to work at the same time. So it's trying to kind of combine everything, I guess, and form this new way of living and working together.
And have you done much research on like what you need, like the stuff you need to be a digital nomad, or are you just completely winging it?
So it's going to be complicated to figure that out. I think I'm definitely going to have to get the help of an accountant or someone that's more experienced in what I'm doing than I am. So
I recommend a good one.
Thanks. So sounds good when I say it. In practice, I don't know how exactly it works, but this is what I'm hoping to document. This is what I'm hoping to figure out for myself, and hopefully it will make that seem more accessible to more people.
Yeah, definitely. So does that mean that like you'll spend 3 months in Berlin, but then you'll have to go out of Europe for the following 3 months after that?
Yeah, so I could come back to the UK.
Okay.
But yeah, the plan isn't really to come back to the UK. So we are looking at outside of Europe, or going somewhere in Europe, but having to get a visa.
It's really interesting actually, because I think a lot of people maybe think about, being a digital nomad or kind of moving abroad, but don't actually necessarily look into the logistics of it all. And I think it'd be really cool to actually follow your journey. Like, I think that's a whole YouTube page in itself. I think you can easily repurpose your platform, because I think so many people will be inspired by that and want to see where in the world Lydia is right now. So I kind of love that. And I know you've mentioned, like, before we came on the podcast and stuff, that you're like super nervous about graduating, and it's all kind of hitting you, and you're like, I hope I don't end up crying on the podcast. And that is why we've strategically got some tissues on the middle of the table, because you were like, I feel that, like, stressed and stuff like that. But I think we all feel it. Like, when I graduated, I literally was having panic attacks all that summer, and I was going into teaching, and I just knew, like, it didn't feel right, and I was so nervous. So I just think there are so many people out there that feel that way about kind of, we've all been through school, the systems, it feels repetitive, and there's always a goal that's very easy to see, and we're compared to all our peers, and then we step out into the big wide world, and it's like, here you go.
Yeah.
Off you go.
Work it out.
Yeah. And I feel like you are working it out with this whole, like, digital nomad thing. And I think it's quite inspiring. So yeah, I love that. And I'm excited to see where your journey takes you as well.
Thank you.
But one of the things we love chatting about on the Talk 20s podcast is our biggest adulting failures. Is there anything that springs to mind when you think about big mess ups that you've had, and, something you're happy to share with our listeners?
So I wouldn't say it's a big failure, but I'd say the lesson that I learned from this stuck with me. And it was when I was living in Copenhagen. And Copenhagen is a massive cycling city.
Okay.
Everyone cycles there. I think after Amsterdam, it's the most popular city for cycling. It's got its own road system, so everyone cycles. And it was in the first few weeks of me moving there. I had my bike, and it was my first time experiencing the Danish cycling rush hour. There was a cycling rush hour in Copenhagen, because at the same time, I guess, here where everyone leaves and drives home, everyone in Copenhagen, or at least a large portion of people, get on their bike and cycle home. So the cycling lanes suddenly get super, super busy. And there was one day that I was cycling back from the business school, and we were going down quite a long straight road. So people were kind of picking up the pace cycling. And I was like, oh, okay, like, guess I will too then. Because I didn't want to inconvenience anyone or hold anyone up. So I was like, okay, this is going a bit fast now. This is not, this is a bit fast for my liking, but I just went along with it. And all of a sudden, the person in front of me just braked out the blue. And I just wasn't comfortable enough with my bike yet, because I know how to ride a bike, but it's a different kind of bike to what I was used to. You had to cycle backwards, for example, to brake the bike. There was handlebar brakes, but if you press those, you would go over the handlebar. So you had to cycle backwards.
Oh my gosh,
so there was a few things that I was still getting
yeah.
used to. This person in front of me breaks all of a sudden, and I just go flying into them and knock them straight onto the floor. And this was probably, I'd say, not an elderly woman, but she wasn't young. Mm-hmm. And I felt so awful because no one was hurt. Luckily, she wasn't hurt. I think she was just a bit shocked because she didn't expect me to come barreling into the back of her bike.
Of course, yeah.
And so it was fine. No one was hurt. Everyone carried on. But it really stuck with me. And I suppose because it's quite a metaphorical lesson in a way about pace. Because I started going at a pace that I wasn't comfortable with. It was way faster than I was prepared for. And as a result of that, this incident happened. And it really knocked my confidence. And as a result, I ended up at a slower pace than I even was before. Because then getting on my bike the next day, for example, I was going so slow. Because I was like, I'm a danger on the roads. So yeah, it just really stuck with me. And I feel like it's a lesson that we can apply to so many different situations in our 20s, that there's often no benefit at trying to rush something and trying to go at a pace faster than is necessary for you, just because that's the pace that everyone around you is
So
going.
true.
So
There's
very
a life lesson in
philosophical,
everything.
but yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't describe that. I don't know if it was a fail or not, but it was definitely something that stuck with me.
I think, I love that kind of seeing the lessons in everything, because I think for someone in that situation, it does scare you, like any of those kinds of things. Same with driving, a lot of people having, mini accidents and things like that. It does like set you back a little bit. So yeah, thank you for sharing that story, because I feel like it's one of those things that like probably at the time felt super scary for you. And,
and I felt awful.
Yeah.
Like that's not, you never want to be responsible. Luckily, as I said, she wasn't hurt, but you never want to be responsible for ever putting anyone else in a situation where they could even be hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing to see how you've grown on YouTube. But one of the things that you're probably quite good at sharing actually is the things that you're finding particularly difficult at that moment in time. Maybe because you are online a lot, but it's a nice thing that we bring into the podcast, because when people listen to this, they might think, oh, Lydia's got it all figured out. She's going to be a digital nomad next year. She's graduated. She's got this amazing YouTube career. But we know from chatting to so many people on the podcast that there are always challenges that everyone is facing. So for you, what's the challenge that you're facing at this moment in time, and what's holding you back?
I'd say it's definitely my perfectionism. I think I always kind of want the perfect end result straight away.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I've got this amazing plan, or at least kind of vague plan to go to Berlin and then wherever else afterwards. It's an incredible plan. But in my head, I'm always sort of like not dulling it down, but yeah, because I haven't got there yet. So the perfectionism means that I have quite an all or nothing mindset. It's either it needs to be perfect or it needs to be this isn't going to work at all. I'm not very good at accepting the in-betweens and the process of anything. But I am already realizing that post-grad life is going to be a very up and down process, and I need to get comfortable with those downs, because there could be downs. I'm kind of leaving the identity that I had on social media, trying to form something new. It's very likely that it's going to dip before it hopefully goes back up, and I need to get comfortable with sitting with those dips, I think, because what my perfectionism means sometimes is I'll get to that dip and I'll go, okay, I'm just going to scrap it then. So I need to make sure that I don't do that.
No, don't.
And it's even like I'd taken up running recently, and I just expect to be good at running straight away, and it's just not like that. Like I'm on these runs
wish it was
going,
like that.
oh my God, this is so difficult. So then it takes a lot, and running is actually really teaching me a lot about the process. It's actually been really beneficial. So yeah, I'm having to kind of then accept the fact that I can't just start running and expect to be like a marathon runner.
Yeah.
I've got to start somewhere. So yeah, it's getting comfortable with the in between and the ups and downs.
I think that's so relatable. I think so many young people will be saying the same thing, that like everyone just wants like a life that's like easy, breezy, no ups and downs, no hard times. But like in reality, that's never what happens. And I feel like just becoming like incredibly resilient, or just good at handling like the in-betweens, the tricky moments where you can just go, okay, I'm having a bit of a rubbish day today, but like it's not going to be like this forever. Like I think is just such an untalked about skill that just helps people so much.
A skill, definitely.
And I was rubbish at that, like when I graduated. And I think I've definitely got better, especially being a business owner. Like every day is different as well. But like I think it's an underestimated skill that like you don't really learn until you really have to learn it, basically.
Definitely one I need to improve.
Yeah, I love it. But yeah, it's been absolutely amazing to chat to you fresh out of graduation, because obviously this podcast is all about kind of figuring out those next steps. And it's really nice to have a chat with you about, how you're feeling in this moment. And hopefully it's something you can look back in a year's time and be like, why was I even worrying? It's been fine. I've traveled the world. But it's nice to have a little capture of this moment of like what current grads are actually feeling, because we often forget, like, we've just interviewed Abby earlier, who's a financial educator, and she's like, in her late 20s, and she could look back on it in such a different way.
Yeah.
But for you, it's really nice to capture that moment of like, no, I am graduating right now. Like, what's next for me and having all of those emotions, because we had an episode really recently with the amazing Eve Bennett, who is in a very similar place to you. She's also graduating right now. And it just feels really nice to be able to capture the moment, because so many people messaged us and was like, that was so relatable, that episode. And I feel like this one will be too.
I love that one, yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us. But we always end the podcast with the same question that we ask all of our guests. And for you, it wasn't so long ago, but if you could look back at 20-year-old Lydia and give her just one piece of advice that would see her through her 20s, what would you want to say to her?
I would say be kind to yourself and be kind also to your body. I feel like this is a whole nother topic that we could potentially talk about. But yeah, I'd say when I was 20, I had a kind of really unhealthy relationship with food and exercise, and it was also lockdown. So it was a bit of a funny period for everyone. But I was just so unkind to myself, and I'm still kind of suffering the physical consequences of putting my body through something like that. So yeah, I won't delve into it too much because I feel like it's a whole big topic actually. But yeah, I would just say overall, just be kind to yourself. You know, this is the one body that you have. This is, you know, the one sort of life that you have. So just make sure that you're overall being kind.
I think a lot of people can relate to that, especially like in those early days and putting so much pressure on ourselves to be something, to look like something, to experience all these different things and have this kind of job. And we just put way too much pressure on ourselves. I think that's the whole summary of this conversation, is that like to remove a little bit of that pressure and ease it in whatever way, and just know that everything's going to be okay. It's all going to be okay.
Definitely.
Well, good luck with the digital nomad life. I'm very jealous. If I ever find myself in Berlin next year, I will definitely meet you for a coffee. But yeah, good luck with everything. I'm so excited to follow your journey on YouTube. And yeah, just keep doing what you're doing, because you're doing fabulous.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on. I've really enjoyed it.
Amazing.